So my name is Ajanique. I've been your biggest fan for many years. Um, I need a squeezy, yeah, and I need a piece of cake.
To tell you, that's just a drop in the ocean of the level of anticipation among students at the Virgin Islands School of Technical Studies VIST for in-person interactions with celebrity judge and famous YouTuber of How to Cake It, Yolanda Gamp. Gamp arrived in the territory yesterday, February 13, hitting the ground running. She's telling her stories and fielding questions from schools on Tortola and the Virgin Gorda, and will be closing out the day this evening at the H. Lavity Stout Community College. Now, her first stop was at VIST, and we were on spot to capture those moments. Here's what she shared with those students and the teachers.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shanda Webster Glasgow, and I'm the organizer and visionary of the Caribbean Bacon Awards. And today we have a special guest in the house, and I know a lot of you follow her and a lot of you know her. So I'm going to, by no further ado, introduce Miss Yolanda Gamp.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. How are you? Good. When I was in high school, I was always really artistic, and I knew I wanted to have some sort of artistic career. At the time, I thought it was going to be interior designer. And I sort of chickened out at the end of high school from auditioning and producing a portfolio for the main art and design college that is in Toronto, where I'm from. And I instead applied to go to culinary school. So I went to school to learn how to cook. I love cooking, I love wine, I love eating. But we did a little bit of baking at school, very minimal. And through the minimal baking we did, I realized that that's what I truly loved. And you are in trouble, young lady. No. Where was I? I always liked baking at home, but I would bake little things like Rice Krispie squares and brownies and nothing like what I bake today. But when I was in culinary school and we did that little bit of baking, I realized that that's where I really found joy, and that was my favorite part. So at the time, we had to do a co-op position to earn hours, and I should have picked a restaurant. We were giving an entire list of places we could pick, and it was all restaurants. And I went to the dean in a very bold move, because I'm very shy, and I asked him for permission to instead apply to a bakery if he would make an exception. And he did, and I didn't realize at the time, but my bold decision in asking that question and him allowing me to do so is kind of what changed my life and put me on this trajectory. And so I worked at a bakery for about 3 years and fell in love. And bakeries, professional bakeries, usually have stations. So, for example, there was one gentleman who just manned the ovens. There were 8 ovens, and all he did was check the temperatures, remove the trays, put the trays in, rotate the trays. That was his job. There was another gentleman that all he did was make doughs. So he made cookie dough, pie dough. He was in charge of making all of the elements. And then there was, of course, the cake decorating station, which is where I really fell in love. And once I got to that, which was my last station, I knew that that was what I wanted to do, and I became obsessed with it. I lived and breathed and ate cake, and that was all I wanted to do. This bakery provided cakes. They had their own little storefront, but they also provided cakes to like coffee shops and restaurants who didn't have a pastry department. And every day I'd get a list of all the cakes that were ordered, and by the end of the 3 years, I could ice 120 cakes a day. And so, but they were all just iced. No novelty, no fondant, nothing of that nature. And when I reached that point, my bosses who owned the bakery actually let me start preparing the wedding cakes. So they would make wedding cakes, and I would work alongside them, and I was able to ice bigger cakes, learned how to tier cakes, and they would do the finishing touches. And then I reached a point where I just didn't feel challenged anymore, and I wanted something more. And I started to think about all the artistic things I made as a child, using my hands, and I wanted to carve and sculpt. And so I just started to make cakes on the side out of my mother's kitchen for anyone who would take a cake, basically. I was throwing cakes at people for free. And it's quite an expensive hobby because every cake I made, I needed all of the tools. I didn't have any cake decorating tools. And then what happened was, so I used to bake in my mother's kitchen, and my parents had had a business in our basement. My father unfortunately passed away in the year 1999, and the business space that they had sat vacant for a lot of years. And so at this point, I had been making cakes for about 6 years, and I kept saying, you know what, I'm going to get myself, I had saved enough money, I'm going to get myself a professional oven, a big mixer, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to quit my job, and I'm going to do this full time. And so that's what I did. I moved my kitchen to my mom's basement. And I started to make cakes full time. I did this for about 16 years in Toronto, delivering all types of cakes, building my portfolio. And it's difficult because when people come to you and they say, I want a cake that looks like an electric guitar, and you've never made that before, they have to put a lot of trust in you in order for you to make that. And I remember thinking, I love taking on every single challenge of making something I knew nothing about, had never made before, and that's how I built my portfolio. And then in 2011, I used to make cakes for a party planner. And in 2011, he was friends with a girl named Jocelyn who had a production company and was creating TV shows. And so he called her and he said, look, we're doing these events and we have this girl. Her name's Yolanda. She's making these cakes. This is a great idea for a TV show. And sure enough, Jocelyn came and filmed us. And what we were doing together was making cakes and elaborate sweet tables that had a theme or a color scheme. Uh-oh, another one. Yes, sit in the corner. No. So we were making these elaborate sweet tables where my cake would be the centerpiece and the focal point, and then I would bake other treats that matched, and we would do florals and linens and everything, and we made these elaborate sweet tables. And Jocelyn came and filmed us. We were doing a charity event at a golf course that was stunning, and the theme was like a fall harvest. And she filmed us, and she created a sizzle reel, and then it eventually, within 1 year, actually became a TV show that was called Sugar Stars. It aired on Canadian Food Network, and took 10 months to shoot. And that was a huge jump for me because, A, I'm really shy. Being in front of the camera was really difficult. Having all these people in my space, because we filmed it in my kitchen in my mother's house, was really difficult when I had been alone for so long. And I also was working with other people. There were other people on the show. And I think it really started to open me up. And I realized, you know, when life sort of puts something in your lap, even if you didn't expect it, you have to be open to at least try and see where it brings you. I remember thinking, my only concern was I'm going to do my best work and put that forward because it's going to be on camera and all of Canada is going to see it. And perhaps this is going to help my business. That was genuinely all I cared about. The show only had one season. It wasn't renewed. And in the meantime, unbeknownst to me, Connie and her business partner, Jocelyn, kept pitching me to other networks, Food Network, Cooking TV, all these networks, pitching show ideas about me and these cakes that I was making. Because as you know, cakes were on the rise. We had Buddy, who I just shot a show with, the Cake Boss. You had Ace of Cakes. Cakes were becoming something in everyone's household. And they were constantly told no. Basically, everyone said no. They were actually told that I had no personality. And in the meantime, I also had a baby. I had my son. And when my son was about 8 months old, they called me and they said, let's just do this ourselves. We hear that YouTube is a big thing. Everyone's, you know, creating content on YouTube. Why don't we just do it our way? And at this point, I had nothing to lose because I had shot the show for 10 months. I had to turn away my entire clientele. I couldn't shoot and make cakes. Cakes take a very long time. And then I had a baby, so I wasn't caking. And I thought, once again, what do I have to lose? I didn't really know anything about YouTube. I'm not of that generation. My son would tell you something very different. He knows everything about YouTube. And I thought, once again, here's the universe handing me something. I get to return to this art form that I've loved and missed. And I clearly remember thinking, you know what, this is going to be great. We can make a video here and there at our own pace. And I mainly thought, now I can make all the cakes I want to make. Because the truth is, when you're in business, I have to make cakes that people are willing to pay me for, right? That's the truth. But in my head, I had this vision of all these cakes that I wanted to try and create. and no one to make them for us. So now we had this YouTube channel, and Walter, the watermelon, would be one of those things. That was something I had thought about in my head for so long, but I couldn't convince anyone to buy a watermelon cake for their wedding for some reason. And so I remember just feeling like rejuvenated at the thought of getting to once again pursue my art form, but completely on my own terms. And for my business partners, Connie and Jocelyn, it was the same. They were in the business of TV. They were constantly coming up with creative ideas, and networks were constantly telling them no, right? If it isn't the Real Housewives of this new city, we don't want it. So we went to YouTube. We learned all that we could. We've learned a lot. And I always say, you know, we were so blessed. I don't know whether it was luck, if it was the combination of the three of our individual talents, as well as no one was really making sculpted cakes on YouTube. There was baking and there was, you know, cute things, but there was no one doing quite what we decided to do. And so there you have it. I remember at that year that we started, which was 2015, we were told we were kind of late to the game because YouTube had already monetized. So a lot of the people who were doing well on YouTube had been YouTubers for years without making any money. And then when it monetized, here they were. They already had this following. That year, YouTube Fan Fest happened to be in Toronto, downtown at Yonge and Dundas. And we called whoever we needed to call and basically begged to get in and offered to bring a cake for free. So I ended up making 4 cakes of the acronym YouTube Fan Fest. So YTFF, each letter was a whole cake in YouTube red, decorated with candies for free, brought it down there. I remember taking pictures with really famous YouTubers at the time, like Jenna Marbles and Bethany Moda, and we met all kinds of people in that circle. And we were given the advice. At the time, we had about 2,000 subscribers who were all people we generally knew. Like it was our family, their friends, anyone. And we were told, if you can get to 5,000 by the end of the year, stick with it. If not, this is a really tough game. So we were given very honest advice. And that same year, my birthday is in July, and in June of that year, I asked the audience for a birthday gift. I asked them to double our subscribers. And so I boldly asked them for 5,000 subscribers by my birthday, which is July 21st, 2015. And I remember feeling, Jocelyn was like, let's just ask. You can't have what you want if you don't ask for it. And I felt like it was just so bold, like the audacity of me to ask for that. And by midnight on July 21st, we had 100,000 subscribers. We got 20 times what we asked for. And that was another big lesson. I had never really thought of just asking for what I wanted. It seems so simple, but it's really hard to do. And so that set us on a really great trajectory. I always say the channel is like, it's as if Connie, Jocelyn, and I got into a rocket ship and we were still trying to do up our seatbelt and it was taking off and we couldn't keep up. And what I love about YouTube in comparison to television is with television, it's a very big gamble. First of all, the likelihood of you pitching something, them greenlighting it, airing it in the perfect time slot, and you getting success from that, or even money because you don't own the content, they do, is really tricky. And so you film a whole season and put it out, you do all the hard work, and then at the end of the day, they can say, it was all right, and it goes nowhere. With YouTube, it is a community, and it's not a one-to-one, it's a relationship with your viewers and subscribers. And you have the opportunity to listen to them in real time. With every video we put up, people would make suggestions of what I should cake and what they wanted to see. And every time we would respond, so would they. So once upon a time, I remember the audience asked, when I was in my giant food era, the audience asked to see giant sushi. That was a really popular request. And as soon as I made it, that was our first video that hit 1 million views in 24 hours. So you get a lot of reciprocation if you are open to it and if you welcome it. Whereas TV, it's a very different ball game. I'm not knocking TV. I now am on TV. I'm on Crime Scene Kitchen on Fox as a judge, and I just shot a show with the Cake Boss Buddy, which will be called Cake Toppers, and it will be on A&E this year sometime. I like TV because it I just told you I was super shy and never thought I'd be in front of a camera. TV opens me up to growing in a different way. At this point, I've been a cake decorator for 26 years, and I've caked my dreams away. I've written 2 books on cake. I've made hundreds of cakes on the channel, thousands of cakes before anyone even knew my name or was watching me. So I'm very fulfilled in that sense. But TV challenges me in a different way, and that is to use my knowledge to help other people and also to judge other people, which is really hard because I don't like wrecking people's cake dreams. I like to give them good advice and encourage them. And that's one of the spirit of How to Cake It is, joy and aspirational baking, and just give it a try because you never know where you're going to be. I wouldn't be here if I didn't try. If I didn't walk into the dean's office and say, will you give me permission to do this? I wouldn't be here. So yeah, I think that's the story. It is one of those things that looks kind of, I won't say glamorous, but social media has this appearance of ease. Like I'm just standing in a kitchen making a cake and oh wow, millions of people are watching, but it is really hard. I can tell you in the first 5 years of the channel, I worked 6 days a week constantly. My son was upstairs with my mother. We would shoot till 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. Every cake on my channel has taken me 2 to 4 days, and you are watching a 12-minute video. So there's a lot that is unseen, especially, we have a joke, Connie Jocelyn and I always joke that we chose to do the hardest and longest possible thing on YouTube, because I'm not just vlogging, right? I'm not just filming something in real time. I'm doing something that takes a lot of time, and at the end of the day, anytime you're trying to control food, you can't control food. There's a lot of factors you can't control. Weather. And for me, who lives in 4 seasons, the rules change every season. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, even just being responsive to this great community that we have built. The bigger your community is, the harder it is to even respond or participate in everything that they would like you to. And then also there's the question of sort of not losing yourself in what you have built. Because even though I have an audience and subscribers and this community, I'm still me and I have my own dreams. And when other people get to comment on everything you do, that is very difficult. That is very difficult, and it can change you in ways that you just didn't really expect. I think that's all I have to say. I think if anyone has any questions, I'll answer.
I know you talked about in the journey, you were denied many times. Was there any time that you wanted to give up?
Yes, absolutely. There's been several times that I've wanted to give up. I'd say the first time was probably after Sugar Stars, the Canadian TV show. And that was for a multitude of reasons. I had given up my clientele. And so now imagine every time someone called me for a wedding cake, I was like, I'm unavailable. Go here, go here. And I had worked so hard to build that reputation and clientele. I became a mom, which is life-changing in so many ways that no one can ever tell you. So I started to feel like, in some way, I've always felt like I am a daydreamer. That's just the truth. And so when I had a child, I started to think, I should get myself a real job and just stop making these cakes. I never really felt like, especially in my friend group, my friends all have, real jobs. They work at banks and they're teachers and they have, and I'm like, oh, I make cakes that look like watermelons. So I started to feel like maybe this wasn't the path for me. The other thing people don't realize is when you are a professional cake decorator, you are married to your weekends, because when do events happen? On the weekend. People get married on the weekend, they have birthday parties on the weekend, they have bar mitzvahs on the weekend. And so I would work all week creating these cakes, doing the shopping, doing the inventory, and then my weekend was spent delivering these cakes. Once upon a time with my mother, I'd sit in the trunk of her car holding them, and we'd go around the city, and then my boyfriend, who's now my husband, would also help me as well. And my whole weekend was just delivering cakes. And then Mondays would typically be my Sunday. Monday would be my day of rest, because now the weekend's done, the cakes were safe, they were delivered, everyone's happy, rest, and then start again. So when I had my child, I started to think, how can I be married to my weekends when I have a child? He's going to grow up, he's going to go to school, and weekends will be our time. So I definitely wanted to quit then. When Connie and Jocelyn called me and I was sitting on the couch with my son, I never expected that call. I never expected them to rally for me the way they did. It wasn't something that I had asked for. But once again, here's an opportunity that fell in my lap, and I also felt like I had missed my passion because I had been dedicated to it for so long, and now I was just dedicated to like changing diapers and other things that I did daily. And so we went for it, but it took off so quickly. We could have never known the challenges. The next time I felt like quitting was I gave up YouTube in 2020, which don't know if you noticed, but that was an odd year. And I was really tired and burnt out from YouTube. That's part one. I unfortunately found out that my mother was ill and she has Alzheimer's. So that's part two. Being a mom is a struggle that never ends. That's part three. And I was just tired all around. And then the world had this massive shift. And we were kind of, I don't want to say lucky, but one great thing about How to Cake It is because we were always an online social presence, we were already there when COVID happened. We weren't like the businesses who suddenly had to shift and figure out this online internet. That was our bag, right? So we were there for our community in any way that we could be. And I don't know if you remember this, but a lot of people took up baking or returned to baking in COVID because here we were stuck at home. I remember we couldn't find flour. People couldn't find bananas. Like everyone was making banana bread for some reason. And so we responded as a company by creating something called Bake You Happy, which was online virtual classes that were live and rallying some other Canadian talent and American talent that bake their own things, whether it's beautiful decorated sugar cookies or macaron, whatever, you name it. And we started these classes to give back to our community because the truth is on the channel, we can only put out one video a week. By the time I'm done the cake, if the cake has taken me 24 hours, that's 24 hours of footage to edit and turn into 12 minutes, and then we start again. And so we provided these classes, and the community really responded. That's the part of our business that Rachel runs. And we felt so great being able to give back to people because people felt isolated and super lonely at that time. And so we're so grateful we could give back to the community and that they responded well. But 2020 was the time I wanted to give up. And I actually did. I don't like saying quit because it has like a negative connotation. I don't want to say that I quit. I want to say that I took a rest because I was tired, burnt out, and also creatively drained. You know, when you're forced to be creative constantly, creativity, I find, comes in moments of rest and relaxation, and it can strike you when you least expect it. But I never had rest and relaxation. I was always making a cake, thinking about next week's cake, and felt mentally drained as well. So I took a year and a half off YouTube, which is a very big risk because anything that is algorithm based only feeds you when you feed it. But it really got to a breaking point where there was no choice. And I truly believed I would never return. When I stopped, I thought in my head I would never return. I did reach a place where I was ready to return, and I'm back on YouTube now. And I have to say, just like I suggested that when the universe hands you something, you have to be open. So at this point, the universe was handing me exhaustion, and I had to be open and accept it. And oddly enough, when I decided to quit YouTube and we posted my last video, a week later is when Crime Scene Kitchen called. So please understand, in the first 6 years of How to Cake It, I was given several television opportunities that we turned down. I was called by celebrities to make cakes for their children that we turned down because I was constantly filming and I didn't have time to fly to LA. So once I sort of said, okay, YouTube, wait for me over here, other opportunities arose and I was willing to take them.
Hello. Oh, hi. I've been a fan since Walter, by the way.
Walter is responsible for my career.
So my question is for the benefit of the students here. I just want to ask, what would your advice be if we wanted to get started on doing something like novelty cakes, especially in a community that may not be, we don't really have that many novelty cakes. It's not something that you tend to see going to a typical birthday party or something like that. So what would your advice be in a community with limited things you can have right down the road? How do you get started? And how do you keep your enthusiasm up?
Yeah, no, it's a tricky one. you've got to jump in. You've got to put yourself out there. So I will say, just like me, you're probably going to have to make some cakes for your own benefit at first and bring them to events so that people can see your work and have a visual representation. The other thing I'm going to talk about, which I never mastered, is pricing. And this is the reason I'm talking about it is because this is the number one question I get asked whenever I do like virtual Q&As. Unfortunately, it is an art form that the price is hard to reckon with. You know, like we live in a society where somebody will gladly spend X amount of dollars on a designer t-shirt or X amount of dollars on an expensive champagne because it's a social status thing and it says something about you. But the cakes you make are art. What's difficult about it is you can't keep it. You've got to eat it. And so people have a hard time reconciling with the price. And at the end of the day, what you're charging for, unlike other baked goods, for example, where it's ingredient cost, you break it down, I made 12 cookies. If it costs this much, each cookie is this much. Time is a huge factor in novelty cakes because, yes, you're baking a cake, but the time it takes you to turn it into whatever you're turning it into is so valuable. And the other thing is you need to realize, especially when you're making cakes you've never made before, even the channel. Almost every cake on the channel I had never made before the channel. So I could guess and estimate how much time it would take me, but I was never right. I'm rarely surprised. There's rarely a surprise where it takes less time. We usually like rejoice when that happens. It's rare. It always takes more time, and then the environmental factors will hurt you. So you have to be able to price for time, because once you get into a situation where you don't price correctly and your talent grows and you get even better, you kind of become stuck there. Once you set that bar and people know, oh, she paid this for this cake. How come this cake is? It's a really and to be honest, I never mastered it. Even when I made my last cake that I sold, I look back now and I think that should have been double the price. And you know what? It's still true. I can't tell you how many emails and calls we get at How to Cake It where people want me to make a cake for something and they have no idea how much it costs. And at this point, they're technically paying a celebrity cake decorator. So it's a really tricky thing, and I know a lot of novelty cake decorators struggle with this because of the questions I get. It's also very different than wedding cakes. Wedding cakes are a bit easier to price. Often people price by slice. So they'll take the ingredient cost, they'll take a general time, and then they'll say, okay, you need a wedding cake for 100 people. If it's $7 a slice, it's $700. But with novelty, anything can arise. I'm sorry that my answer didn't make you feel better, because I don't know. It's really difficult. And if you think about it, there's a deadline, right? Like if we're going to compare, people always compare novelty cake decorating or cake decorating to baking. I think that's an unfair comparison because of the line between baking and art. If you were a painter, right, you would paint whatever vision that you had in your head, and it would take you however long you wanted. 2 days, 3 years, 20 years, right? You'd go back to it and leave it. And then you'd look at it and say, it's worth this, and that's what you'd sell it for. But with a cake, you have a deadline. Someone hires you, you sell them a vision, and you have to deliver it by this specific time, right? And then don't even get me started on delivery and the stress of delivering cakes and the things that can happen and the safety kit that you have to carry with you in order to fix things, which I'm sure we'll see at the competition.
My name is Ajanik. Do you know Cake Boss? Yeah.
We're actually the same age. Yeah.
That's my cousin.
What? Really? Oh, wow. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I just shot a show with him.
Good morning. So I picked up Ajanik from the boat, and she was all excited. She was like, oh my God, I've always wanted to meet her. I wonder if I could take a picture with her and have her sign it. She was very excited. And now she has the opportunity and she's shy. Tell me what you want. But she was very excited. On the drive here, she was coming up with ideas. Okay, what we could do? Okay, I have to sign something so I can put it on my phone. Okay, I said to her, okay, I could take a picture from the net, put it on our page, and then she can sign it for you. She said, that's good. And then she came back to the office. She said, you know what? Can I take a picture with her? And then you print it, then she signs it. So she's been waiting for you to get her. and now she's had the opportunity to meet you. I hope when we get off camera, she can actually say so to you herself. But we're really glad to have you here.
On behalf of the Ministry of Education, Minister of Education, Honorable Sharidi Castro, or Acting CEO, Acting Deputy CEO, I am the Education Officer for Technical Studies at this school. And so we want to say thank you for being here, for sharing with our students, sharing your expertise. And we believe that the future of our students is very, very bright. And we know that this is just one stepping stone to get them closer to that. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Great.